Awesome.
Hi, Corinne. How are you?
I'm good, Craig. How are you?
You are awesome. I am so excited. I'm always excited when I join with you. I'm even more excited because now I get to see your face. Usually when we engage, we're usually on the phone and so forth. But now joining with you here and even making it even more exciting is also being able to share with others who are joining us or watching this live stream either now or at a later moment. And I just want to start off just sharing a little bit about how this came about. I started to do some Google Hangouts, and the thought was, certainly with the movie that I'm working on right now and getting ready to distribute, certainly sharing news of that. And then it just became clear to me that it's really sharing news about what I'm inspired by. And I know in working with you, Corinne, there's been a lot of projects that you've been inspired by. And I think what we're finding out together that these projects of inspiration are really helping us and our shared mind. So I thought it'd be fun to connect with you and just share from the heart, as to what's happening and what we're learning and so forth. So with that said, I'd love to hear about what's current in your experience. What are some of the projects that have been unfolding that you've shared with, and we'll take it from there. And if there's anybody listening to this conversation and wants to ask a question, simply press the Q&A icon on the screen and go ahead and type your question here, and we'll certainly try to get to it. Corinne.
Awesome. Thanks, Craig. So before I even dive into a lot of the big projects that relate to A Course in Miracles, Craig and I have a shared project, which isn't really a project, our love of our pet chickens and all that we learn from them and how much they inspire us. And so I've actually really enjoyed getting to talk to you, Craig, about our little chickies and share videos and photos on Facebook. It's really fun. Yeah, so they've just been inspiring me, and I felt moved to share. And so if we turn our awareness, I guess, to A Course in Miracles and everything going on, I've been just really guided with doing a lot more, with sharing a lot more, with teaching the course, because as I teach it, I learn it. That was something that I heard Earl Purdy once say, that he loves teaching what he needs to learn. And so I've just found that the more that I listen, the more that I'm called to share in this area, because like you said, that shared mind, it's not just for me, it's for the benefit of all. And so I don't even know where to begin, honestly, in terms of the latest projects. There have been so many things going on. I was just playing with my chickens before we began the Hangout, and Craig and I were talking about them, so they've been on my mind. But in terms of online stuff, so Craig and I both, as I'm sure people have heard, we are joined together and working on our Miracle Share nonprofit organization, the conference that we have coming up in October, with a bunch of different teachers who will be speaking in that event. But what's really exciting for me is that this time around we are inviting people, other people who are inspired by the course, to share their teaching through a 10-minute video that can be submitted through a page on the miracleshareconference.org website. And so the interest in that has been just, there's a lot of energy behind that, and I know that people are really excited about it. So it's just really nice to see how much this is taking off and how much joining with you has just been really growing and creating more and more, teaching opportunities and learning opportunities, which is really cool. So the conference is really the first thing after my chickens that's on my mind. And actually, I can share another big thing that's coming up. Actually, tomorrow, I am retreating. I'm going on a 9-day silent mindfulness meditation retreat. And as you know, Craig, and as I've shared very publicly, that I used to really struggle with a lot of anxiety issues, and the core of what has helped me has been A Course in Miracles. That's been it. Through discovering mindfulness meditation in about 2005, I really found that it helped me start to deepen my practice with A Course in Miracles, because it helped me tune in and start to become an even better listener to the voice of spirit within me. So tomorrow I'm leaving for this 9-day retreat. It's going to be all in silence. And to be honest with you, I was a little bit nervous at first. Not nervous, maybe a little nervous, but hesitant to go because it's the middle of summer right now. I've been having a blast playing in the ocean and on the beach, and to leave was like, oh, why did I schedule this during the height of summer break? But I realized actually it was really an experience, a voice that came to me that I'm not going to this retreat alone. I'm going to spend time with Spirit, with the Holy Spirit, just me and Spirit, and 9 days of no distraction. And I am so excited. I am so excited for this time to just really tune in and get quiet. And so that also links into work that I am doing with bringing together mindfulness and A Course in Miracles, because a lot of people have talked about this. There are a lot of elements, there are a lot of references really to getting into the present, to mindful awareness in A Course in Miracles, being that you have to be aware to know whether you're listening to the voice of Spirit or the voice of the ego. You have to know where your mind is in order to choose to redirect it back to that voice within. And so one of the Course quotes that I love is that it says, "You are much too tolerant of mind wandering." And when I went on a 5-day silent retreat back in December, so not too long ago, and I realized, and now I've been practicing the course for a long time, mindfulness for a substantial amount of time, and I went on this retreat, and it was as if my awareness became even more fine-tuned, that the mind chatter in my mind is incessant. It's almost like I'm more sensitive now to what was a more subtle volume before, that during that retreat, I really realized how much of an undercurrent that chatter is there almost constantly. And that helped me to recognize again that these thoughts on the surface of my mind that I'm aware of are not my real thoughts, that my real thoughts are something beneath that. And through mindfulness, through getting into the present moment, I can drop in and be open to receiving my real thoughts, which are those thoughts that come from Spirit. So with that experience in December, I feel like I can digress. But one of the cool things about just getting clearer and clearer of listening to that voice within is that I no longer have to figure out what I need to do. You know, I don't like, oh, you know, should I do this or should I do that? What do I want to happen? You know, I'm not anywhere near that anymore. Instead, it's like I can totally trust that I'll be told what it is that I need to do. And so a few months ago, I was pretty clearly told it's time to offer a program, and I offered a free webinar. It was called A Course in Mindfulness Mediation for Miracle Workers, and that the free webinar you can still access if you go to my webpage, which is From Anxiety to Love. There's a banner on my webpage where you can click through to still see the hour-long webinar where I'm talking all about mindfulness principles and A Course in Miracles. And from there, I offered a 4-week intensive program for folks who really wanted to dive into mindfulness principles while keeping A Course in Miracles principles completely in awareness. We practiced together. We talked about the course together. It was an awesome, awesome experience, and I'm definitely getting the message that I need to be offering it again at some point. I'm not exactly sure when, because right now we're Miracle Share conference preparation underway. But yeah, that's been one of the big projects, and I can keep going because the list just goes on. But let me pause there and see if you have any thoughts come up.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of things that you shared that I thought were very poignant when we're talking about mind training, and we're talking about really what the purpose of all this is. Because I have a lot of different projects that I'm always working on. And, you know, the purpose is clear. The purpose is healing of the mind. The purpose is peace. And it is through these projects for which we get to watch the mind and the way the mind interprets and the mind does what it does. It's through that watching that we become aware and we acknowledge. And there's something about the sharing. So when you and I sit down and talk about, you just mentioned, for example, you're going on this week quiet retreat or silent retreat in the midst of a really fun summer that you're having. And all of a sudden the mind is presented with information of, oh my God, okay, now we're going on this retreat. And what does that mean? And all of a sudden you're taking on these thoughts. And it's like, it's us just talking about how those thoughts show up that really dissolve the thoughts. We can kind of look at it and kind of see. The other thing that you said that I thought was poignant was this idea of listening to spirit, and what that for me translates to is really listening to what just feels inspiring right now, not what feels inspiring a week from now, like or next month. Although those are exciting thoughts, and there's certainly appreciation for things that may unfold. But like right now, what's inspiring? And it could be really simple as taking a next step with a potential future project, or setting up a Google Hangout, or or playing with the chickens. We started the conversation because we both have chickens.
Our chickies.
So it's like. Totally. It's just, really using everything. And it just so happens to be that we also use this course. I know for me, I use the Course in Miracles, and it has been inspiring. When I started this course, the question came up, had been asked about enlightenment or bust, and the movie being titled A Course in Miracles, Enlightenment or Bust. There was a couple of things that I set off to do in the beginning, and this was 3 years ago. The first one was, it was enlightenment. Like, that's what I wanted. I wanted nothing but like enlightenment, like that. Whatever I thought that was is, I wanted something in the future. The other thing is I wanted to hear the Spirit, Holy Spirit, because so often I would hear people talk about hearing Spirit. And I didn't know what that was. I sort of, but really didn't. And it was, so those two things there were a lot of other things, but those two things were the main things. So I was so determined for this enlightenment thing. And that's why I titled the movie Enlightenment or Bust. It was like, if enlightenment isn't real, if enlightenment is not going to happen, then what's the point of anything, really? It was a pretty depressing thought. And so here we are 3 years later, and I see things completely different, in the sense that I realize that it's not about anything in the future. And it goes back exactly to what you were just saying, is just hearing Spirit right now. And it may or may not be an audible voice. It's just simply what feels good right now. And am I willing to follow it? And for me, or I'm sure what you're sharing, I know for us with the Miracle Share Conference that we're going to do, it's a fun feeling to do it. And I'm sure you would agree, things have come up where it's not ideal and it's not perfect. There are quote unquote seeming problems that pop up, but the beauty is to be able to watch the thoughts in the mind as those quote unquote problems come up, to just recognize that the thoughts themselves are, to your point, which I think you just shared, they're not me. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I don't have to take them seriously, and I don't have to be the victim to those thoughts.
And the little, can I jump in? And the little part that we're asked to play is simply to look at those thoughts with Spirit. That's what I just love about A Course in Miracles so much, is that I don't have to fix those thoughts. I don't have to try to, come up with the positive alternative and like focus on that and say that a million times. I don't have to do any of that. All I have to do is say, hey, this fear thought, this whatever thought just flew through my mind. And Holy Spirit, inner guide, whatever you want to call it, I'm willing to bring this to you. I'm willing to look at this with you, because I don't want to keep it. So if I keep it, it's just gonna, all that does is just feed the ego. I don't want to keep it. I want the miracle instead. And that's it. It's a tiny little shift, tiny little thing that we're asked to do for those big shifts to come through. And so I love this pathway so much, because you see the results. It's not theoretical. It's very practical. And I love it just because it works. And like you, Craig, I wanted to respond when you said that with enlightenment or bust. You were just like, if that's it, like that's what I want. My thing, the thought that I've had that's very similar to that, is that I just want to wake up. That's all I want from this life. That's all I want. There's nothing else that is as fulfilling, is as joyful as is this process of undoing the fear blocks, allowing the fear blocks to be undone in our minds. Because if you didn't know me back when I was an anxious mess. And I don't know if anybody watching this, you know, may, if it's anyone, you know, from my life seeing this who may have known me back then, it's really like night and day. Even the fact, I said this to you before we started recording, I used to have horrendous public speaking anxiety, and I dealt with it by over preparing. So I'm a professor adjunct professor of counselor education. I teach counseling classes, one of the many things that I do. And my lessons, I used to just over prepare. I'd get everything, you know, all laid out, everything that I was going to say. And as I started teaching in the realm of A Course in Miracles, in the beginning, it was the same sort of thing. Like, this is what I want to say. Here's my plan. And it's so funny to me now to see that I don't have to do that anymore. I recently spoke at a national conference for therapists about A Course in Miracles, which was really, really awesome. And I did have to put some slides together because that was part of the deal. But I found myself feeling this resistance to making any sort of plan because I knew that the words would be given to me. All I'd have to do is stop and pause. That to me is where mindfulness comes in again, because I remember to pause. I can remember to just drop into this moment. And I'm 100% trusting now that the words will be given. They'll just come. And so you know, that was my first experience really with having to have a little bit of a plan, but really just truly being able to speak from the heart. And I said to you before we began that we have no agenda. We did not talk about, you know, what to cover ahead of time. I didn't prepare anything. And it is absolutely liberating to trust that those words that I need will be given. So again, it's like night and day, and it's all really from the pathway of studying the course, which is really cool.
That's awesome. Yeah, I feel you when you were sharing that idea of preparing, and it did come up in conversation just recently between myself and someone else. And as you were talking, you know, if for many of us who've watched spiritual teachers talk and heard different teachings, not just A Course in Miracles, something that's come up that I've heard that I'm going to bring back to what you just shared is this idea of just dying to the moment. Being willing to just die to the moment. And so when we prepare, and not that there's anything wrong with preparing, because that's not the message, but the willingness to just let everything be as it is, like just trusting enough that no matter where it lands, even if it doesn't land the way you want it to land. So even if on this Google Hangout or whatever we're doing, something happens that it's not perfect or we make a fool of ourselves, that too can be allowed to be. That we can just like really just die to anything, like just let anything happen, and without any need to control or respond to the fear, to the fear. We're just willing to die, and it's always the ego that's behind the control part of, you know, what I need to prepare, what I need to say, because ultimately its biggest fear is that it would make a mistake, and in that mistake there's an interpretation of death of some sort. I also want to make mention that someone said, on the Q&A, someone said, we got Barrett Heading, and that's been coming up for me as the thought all the way. I want to go all the way to enlightenment. Blessing to you guys. Thank you, Barrett. That's beautiful. Yeah, all the way. In some ways, all the way really is also dying to the moment. It's just like, it's really like just letting go of this self-management, you know, the thoughts involved in trying to managing the whole self concept and everything we do. So all the way is really naked, is letting go of all of that stuff. And I just want to make one more point. I want to hand it over to you. The letting go, it's not really anything that we're doing. It goes back to your point, which is just simply the willingness to allow it to be dissolved.
Beautiful. And you said something that made me want to just share that thinking that we're in control. So when you use that word self-management, managing the small s self is freaking exhausting. Like if you think about all of the things, you know, when you think that you're in control, that you have to make this happen and do this and that, it's absolutely exhausting. But if you think about self-management with a capital S, that's when, you know, we can sit back and trust that we'll be guided, that it will make itself known of itself, and that we don't have to do anything. And that's true rest. A Course in Miracles says that rest and peace is a blessing for the living, not the dead. And rest comes from waking. Rest comes as we wake up, as we learn that we are not these bodies, that there's way more to reality than what we seemingly think we're perceiving right now in this world. So that's really, really awesome.
Yeah, and this idea of awake is, you know, I think it was you that just said moments ago, is you wanted to wake up like that, you know, and it's a very present experience. I mean, here we are, you know. I'm always amazed. I mean, you sharing just now that in your past it was seemingly like a different person. The behaviors were different, the experiences were different, the anxiety. And I think a lot of us who've done the course or who are doing the course have that same experience, where it's just like sometimes I kind of laugh to myself because I come into the awareness or the recognition that certain things aren't there anymore, whether it be certain habits or certain fears or certain thoughts that just don't show up. And it's actually, you know, I interpret that as witness. Witness to this undoing, or witness to really what's true, which is that we're all, you know, on our way to be awakened or saved or whatever you want to call it.
I have an example. So to what you just said about, you know, suddenly realizing that certain things that were there aren't there anymore. Last summer, I actually had surgery. It was a surgical procedure. It really wasn't, in the scheme of surgeries, that big of a deal, but it was still very anxiety provoking for me. And, you know, this is only a year ago. So I very much was still in a place of almost feeling like I was sort of watching myself go through this, where even though I felt, you know, nervous about it, there was still part of me that was still very still, that was still at my core peaceful. And I did so much deep letting go. I think do I hear your chicken, Craig? I love it. I love it. I heard the rooster. So with this experience of going through surgery, when things have gotten tough, particularly in the anxiety realm, because a lot of the fears that I struggled with were pertaining to my body. So fears of illness, fears of sickness, whatever it may be. That's when the rubber would hit the road and I would dive even further hardcore into A Course in Miracles. That's where I would start to just do this sort of it was this almost like an upheaval of like, I'm willing to look at everything with you, Spirit. Every single belief, every thought, every attachment that I have, including my attachment to being Corinne, I'm willing to look at all of this with you. And through doing that, and with this surgery, doing this with preparations, I'm loving your chickens, I just have to say. Going through this process in preparation for the surgery, it was a really deep letting go, where basically I just said, Spirit, I give my life completely to you. I'm withholding nothing. I'm just going through this experience and I'm doing it with you. Everything was fine with the procedure, you know, it was all done. And then that was in early June. Later in the summer, I started realizing suddenly that I was going into the ocean with like some decent sized waves with like a boogie board and having a blast when I hadn't gone bodyboarding probably since I was maybe 9 years old. Didn't care when I was riding the little kid waves what anybody else thought of me. Like none of that, I didn't care about it at all. But the significant thing for me was that my fear of the ocean suddenly fell away. That I used to be terrified of getting sucked out, or, you know, even just getting tumbled by a wave, or drowning, and all these fears just fell away. Suddenly I realized that they weren't there anymore. So I feel like that's a specific example to what you just said, that suddenly it's not a big experience. It's just suddenly you realize like, oh, that's not there anymore. You know, it's gone, and it's really gone. So it's pretty cool. It's a pretty cool feeling. And I just so enjoy the ocean in the summer now.
Yeah, it's just witness to the inevitability of the undoing, because it will be undone. It is God's will that we find peace, and there's an awareness or recognition on some level, especially if we find ourselves with the Course or on a spiritual path, that the old way, or the way of thinking oneself as a separate person, and buying into those beliefs, all that's going to create suffering. So in your sharing, and in what you shared, is you shared basically a miracle.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's like this shift in perception. The way something is seen is no longer seen that way. It is seen in a completely different light.
And how liberating. You feel lighter, you feel more free. You're not burdened down with those thoughts of what if. You're just there in that moment, enjoying the moment, just being there. So it's a pretty cool feeling.
Yeah, that is beautiful. I mean, in the simplicity of the words that you chose just now, just being, just being.
And that's why I'm just so excited too for this retreat coming up, is that it's an opportunity to just be rather than do. Now it's funny because having this retreat sort of like insulated, environment, you still see the tendency of the mind to want to plan for the future, to want to protect itself, because in a center, and I think probably all retreat centers, all your needs are met. You have a bedroom, they feed you all the meals. If you need, a snack or something, you can just get it. And yet, watching still the fear thoughts, that's just what the ego does. It's just what the ego wants to do. What if I don't like what they serve for dinner? Maybe I should hoard some food for dinner so I can have it for lunch the next day, or hoard lunch so I can, save it for dinner. Just all these planning thoughts that still come up that, are there because it's, again, that controlling part of the small self that believes it needs to make its own provisions that it won't be provided for. It's a beautiful opportunity when you're in that insulated environment to look at those more subtle thoughts that come up with spirit. So I'm super excited about this retreat this time around, whereas last time I was pretty terrified.
Yeah, I mean, what you're sharing and saying is that those thoughts are basically the ego's thought system, which says you can't trust. It's like, God forbid we actually allow God to give us what He's going to give us in whatever way that shows up, but just allow. The mind wants to figure out and go into those little those detours. They really are detours, because they totally take you away. I mean, they don't feel good, certainly worrying or thinking about it. And I know what you mean. It's like, I'm planning the tour with the movie, and I have no idea how things are going to unfold, where I'm going to stay and what I'm going to eat and how I'm going to get around. And there's a lot of uncertainties, and certainly those thoughts do come up, and, I guess at the base of them, there's a fear of sacrifice on some level. And that seems to be, part of the thought system of the ego, that there's somehow, if I trust, I will have to sacrifice something. I have to sacrifice some sense of comfort or joy. And the Course talks about how we're always so concerned about the comfort of the body. Mm-hmm. It's like we're so concerned about, you had mentioned food, and what are the accommodations going to be like? We're, the thought system is so concerned about this body, and, how is it going to sleep, and who's going to be around, and all that fun stuff. And to think it's all based on the assumption that the body is actually who I am.
Right. And there it is again, that belief in that separate self to look at with spirit. And I'm so glad that you're saying this too, because you're just making me realize again that those thoughts are still there. What if this time when I go, the woman on the other side of the wall is snoring like she did last time I was there, and I can't sleep? That happened last time around. So there's this story again, in my mind. What if that happens this time? And that's, again, where just that awareness of being able to notice that story showing up again, and being willing to not just self-correct and try to fix it myself, but instead bring it to the light, bring it to have that willingness to bring it to spirit, to see it differently. So that's what I love about the course too, is that it's so gentle. The undoing process is so gentle. I used to be terrified. So here's what I would do. When my mom and stepdad have actually been my biggest teachers. They're both hardcore Course in Miracles students, and they facilitated an in-person group for many years. So they've really been my go-to teachers. And back when I was going through some significant anxiety episodes, I would say, you know, I'd be like, wow, I'm failing the course. And they're like, Corinne, you're not failing the course, you're doing the course. But part of the fear that I had was that if I aced the course, that I would get whisked away. That if the course is leading us to enlightenment, there's part of me that's afraid of it. It's the ego part of me, the small self, that's terrified of oblivion, of just being blown into oblivion. And what's been so helpful for me in my experience with allowing these blocks in my own mind to be undone, for that peace to come back, is to see how gentle this is, that we're not going to get whisked away, you know, if we allow more of those fear blocks to be undone. There's nothing to be afraid of, and any part of our mind that still harbors that fear is just simply another part for us to look at. Because when our awareness continues to expand and we fully become aware of who we truly are, we're not going to be afraid of it at all. We're going to go back to what you said. I want enlightenment. I want to wake up. That's where it's going to be at. So I just love how gentle of a process this really is.
Yeah, I feel it and I hear you, and I you know, it's like there's also that it comes back to that fear of sacrifice, you know, that, you know, enlightenment or the healing of the mind means the sacrifice of the identity and all that goes along with it. And it's like, I don't want to let that go. I want to hold on to something. So I hear you when you talk about that. And you're right. It is gentle. It's always what we find on the other side, is this gentleness to it. I remember, you know, part of what I did in the movie, or what the story is in the movie, is really my own story with the course, as I interviewed many teachers along the way. And the story that took place in the movie and in seeming actual life is that I was guided to, you know, change my life situation. Not that the life situation is require, not that this always requires a life change. In my case, that seemed to be what happened, which meant leaving my job and moving and so forth. And so the fear really was at that time is this idea of sacrificing, giving up, and letting go of what I had been used to. And for me, I thought, you know, the course says, do you want freedom of the body or do you want freedom of the mind? And I thought that freedom of the body was where happiness lied. So this idea of being able to do the things that I wanted to do, when I wanted to do them, going out to dinners, traveling, vacations and so forth, all that. And then the fear of letting that go, because if I leave my job, things have to change. Mm-hmm. And so just this to your point of being gentle, when the purpose is clear, and the purpose is really, I mean, there is no higher purpose than the purpose of peace. It doesn't get any better than that. Peace and joy. Peace is not an idle gift. And so with the purpose clear, how can it not be gentle? Mm-hmm. It has to be. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, looking at those fears and really taking that leap of faith. And the leap of faith may appear like a big leap of faith in my story, in the sense that I was leaving my job and other things. But the leap of faith could be anything. The leap of faith could be, you know, speaking in public, the willingness to go without a plan and speak in public. The leap of faith could be just telling someone the truth about something. So the leap of faith can be anything, but we know when we're presented with that leap of faith, and then there's that fear. Basically, we're presented with the step that we know needs to be taken, and then there's that fear. And strangely or beautifully, once we step into it, it's done. It's gone. It's like, it's almost like, okay, you're on the other side before you even realize that you've taken the leap. Mm-hmm. Or you've taken the step. Mm-hmm. So this idea of, you know, looking at our fears and facing them is from the ego's perspective, very fearful and, crippling, because it is afraid. But the truth is once it's faced, looked at, and stepped into, on the other side is complete freedom and no sacrifice. And so as I look back, I left my job. There is no sacrifice in this. That doesn't mean that thoughts don't come up. Sometimes, I'll say to myself, if I was working right now, I can get a new computer or something like that. But that's just more ego thoughts saying that somehow my salvation or my happiness would come from me with another thing. And we're just really looking at those thoughts and continuing the healing practice until that thought is no longer there. Back to what you were sharing about, you come into this recognition of this realization that, oh, that thought is just not there anymore. And there's a freedom that comes to it. And lastly, I just wanted to point out that none of us will, well, I don't know this, but the Course clearly says that none of us will be hurled into awakening. No one's going to be hurled. This is what God doesn't want us to fear. So there's no point in pushing fear. It was, someone stated, you will not be abruptly lifted up and hurled into reality. No, we're not. This is gentle. This is really gentle, and it should be fun. The Course talks about happy learners. That's what this is about, happy learners. Absolutely. So it should be fun. And that's exactly what we're doing. That's why we love A Course in Miracles, and that's why we're here on this Google Hangout, is simply to have fun with it.
Awesome. Craig, you made me think of something that I feel moved to share, and I'm in the midst of writing a blog post about this, but I facilitate a weekly Course in Miracles study group over the phone on Sunday nights. And one of the things that we sometimes talk about are the ego backlashes, and how we can tend to get afraid. Like, well, if I'm advancing here, what is the ego going to do next? Is the shit going to hit the fan because I just allowed some peace in? So this idea of an ego backlash. And I'm going to tie this example in for a moment. When we were talking about this, and this is just this past Sunday, I had this feeling come up, and I asked Spirit, I said, give me a concrete example of what it is that I am feeling that's coming forward through me. And immediately I was given a clear example, and I'll share that example in just a minute. But first, I just want to say that was another example to me of how trust in Spirit grows. And I know now that the words will be given. I almost look at that as another outcome of the surgery that I had a year ago, with just such a deep letting go that my trust has really grown. So I just wanted to make that point. But the actual example that I want to share is that we don't have to fear. It's only the ego telling you to be afraid of an ego backlash. It's only that part of our mind that is, already fearful, that is saying you should be afraid of an ego backlash, because it's the ego not being anything outside of us is only the part of our mind that wants this separation. It's only the part of our mind that's fearful. And so as we turn to Spirit, we're no longer fueling the ego. We're no longer feeding it. So that backlash that we're afraid of can't happen. And I've had this, or if it does seemingly happen, it's subdued. And I've had a number of examples of this occurring in my own life, where the ego backlash is like somebody cutting me off on the road, and then 10 minutes later, something else kind of goes wrong. But it's like really minor stuff that I can choose to get upset about, or I can choose, again, to bring my awareness back to Spirit. And the example that came to me on this study group call, have you ever seen those? I've seen them at like liquor stores and car dealerships. They're those blow up purple tube like clowns or people or whatever they're called, and they go like this. Yeah, they like whip back and forth in the air because there's a fan that's like pumping bursts of air into it, and they look all, maybe a little scary, just maybe a little funny, obviously attention grabbing. But that was the example. When I asked Spirit, give me a concrete example, that was immediately what came forward to me, is that we're the ones holding that fan. And if we're pumping our fan, our belief into the ego, it's going to seem like this like backlash, like scary kind of thing. But what we're learning to do is to say, hey, I want to turn to spirit. I'm turning my energy, my fan, my wind towards spirit instead. And so we're no longer fueling, we're no longer providing that backlash, that whipping thing, any fuel to have any power. And so the extent, so in my experience, the backlashes aren't really a big deal as my willingness to turn to spirit has grown. So I wanted to just share that because I know for a long time I was afraid, well, what is my ego going to put me through next? All that's doing is fueling the ego. All we have to do is notice that there's that fear thought of an ego backlash and look at that with spirit too. Because as we're doing that, as we're looking at that with spirit, we're taking that fan away from filling up this empty shell of an ego that we think is there, and it isn't actually. It's nothing. It's just an idea. That's all it is.
Yeah, I like your analogy of the fan blowing balloon guy, and apparently one of our listeners does too. I was just talking about those blow up people with a couple of friends of mine. So blow up people have been in our minds.
That's funny.
Yeah, there's something very erratic about those blow up people, and spirit's not erratic. Spirit does not waver. Spirit is unchanging, and there's a huge contrast between the two, and that analogy really brings it home. And it's like, yeah, listening to spirit. You said that a couple of times or a few times, and what just comes back to me is just really coming back to just the presence and what feels right in this moment. And it doesn't have thoughts attached to it. It doesn't have to have words attached to it. I think what we'll find is sometimes when we're inspired, we're not even thinking about what we're doing. We're just in the joy of it without question, and flowing and free, and that's what it's about.
Yeah. Another thing that I just wanted to share, since we started off our conversation just talking about projects and things that we are inspired to do, the Mindfulness for Miracle Workers program was something that I was just told, here, do this, and I did it. And now what feels to be coming forward for me is turn my attention back to the book that I've been working on, which, Craig, as you said, that your movie is sort of like your journey with the course and interviewing teachers. The book that I've written, and it's very close to being done. I don't know how soon it will become available because it's in Spirit's hands totally, and it's really very much a relief to not really worry about it, to just know that it's going to come out at the right time that it needs to. But the first part of the book, actually only the first chapter of the book, is my actual story with anxiety. It's called From Anxiety to Love. And the rest of the book really is about taking course principles that were super helpful for me in going from a overwhelmed, panic-stricken, anxiety-laden individual to basically to where I am now. So it's a lot of the course lessons that were helpful for me, a lot of the course teachings. There are snippets, mantras, helpful statements from the course, helpful statements that came through me, included in the book, in addition to meditations and things like that. So I feel really, really excited about it. I feel like it has come together beautifully, and I'm looking forward to whenever the time is right that it will be out there. So that is what I feel like next is where my attention will be going, after some Miracle Share stuff gets done first.
Yeah. Speaking of Miracle Share, and if it interests anybody, right now we are in the process of interviewing teachers. Today I got to interview Tony Ponticello, and these videos will be made available at the virtual conference, and at the same time we'll have an opportunity to engage with 29 teachers, 29, or 28 or 29 teachers who will be available for Q&A sessions during that weekend event. And so right now, the beauty of this whole thing is, and I said this with the movie, is here we are, you know, following inspiration. We're doing this conference. I did this movie. You're working on your book. And I'm bringing it back to, wow, it's just all for me. It's like when I'm sitting there talking to someone and interviewing someone, or even as I sit now to share with you, it's like I'm just amazed at what's being given to me, this shared experience, and how every one of those interviews, you know, it seems like we're putting a conference on for, you know, other people, but really it's for the shared mind, and it's for me, it's for us here. So we're in the midst of video recording people. I have next week David Fishman I'll be interviewing, as well as John Mundy, which I'm excited about. I quite honestly don't know too much about his teachings, and so I'm really excited to expand the scope and meet other teachers for the event.
Awesome. I have not interviewed anybody yet this year. I've been slacking a little bit behind, but they're coming up. I'll be interviewing Amy Torres once I get back from the retreat, and John Mark Stroud I have lined up so far, and both of them are just phenomenal individuals and teachers, and I'm so excited for everybody that has come together this year as part of the conference, and for all of the people who are submitting videos too of their teaching. It's just really, really awesome to see how much Spirit is using so many people to share, to speak through. And I love, Craig, how you said that you feel like it's all for you. 'Cause I feel that way too. I feel like on the Sunday night study groups, I feel like it's all for me. I feel like it's been you know, such a beautiful learning ground for me to learn to trust that Spirit is in me, that the words will, you know, be given. I feel like, yeah, I'm totally on board with you that it feels like it's all for me, and it's all one mind, so it's only ever for us.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. I was watching. I don't know if you've ever heard of the show called Enlightened. I had never seen it before. It's been around for a few years, and Lauren Dern plays the lead role. Does that sound familiar to you?
No.
Okay, so it's called Enlightened, and anyways, I'm just sharing this because I saw an episode yesterday, and she was just talking about it's about this woman who's going through her spiritual experiences, and she talked about how she had this like experience with God, and what was told to her was everything's for you. So she had this experience where she was told everything's for you, and here we are talking about how all of this is for us. And so it's like everything is for you. Like I often question that, like, what does that really mean? Everything's for you. And I used to think that everything for you meant that, you know, either only the things that I deemed good, or only the things that I wanted on the physical plane that were given to me were given by God, or, you know, I had to be on the lookout on what's being given. Is this really for me? But you know, having done the course, as I'm doing the course, and as I'm really asking that question, what does that really mean? What I'm finding is that all of it's for me is really, all of it is for the undoing. Everything is for me in the sense that everything's for the undoing. So it's like every time the ego thought system's triggered by something, then it's translated as, oh, this is happening for me to see the ego's thought system at play, so that I no longer give it the fuel that I've been giving it, so that to keep me in suffering. So everything for me is really allowing everything to be welcomed in this right now. Allow everything, exclude nothing. And the moment that I try to exclude something, it's for me in the sense that it's showing me where I'm still thinking there's separation between me and everything else. So yes, all of it is for me, and it may be a lot of good, quote unquote, things or things that I want, but it's really everything's for me is all of it. And what these projects do is they certainly plug into or tap into areas in the mind that, you know, still have thoughts of fear, or, you know, afraid of, you know, taking the steps towards inspiration, or giving me insights. And that's what I get a lot from these teachers that I speak to, is all these insights. I feel like in some ways between the movie and everything that I'm doing, that it's like the world has just been created to like just give me everything I need for the awakening.
Beautiful. I love how you just said all of that, how you put that And you called to mind to me a couple of course quotes, and one is that the first one was that the soul, this idea of it being all for me, the sole responsibility of the miracle worker is to accept atonement for himself. So it's our task to allow those fear blocks to be undone in our own mind, because that's for the benefit of all. So I love that, because it brings it back to us, because when we get into thinking that we're doing this for others or helping other people, the full responsibility is for me to accept the undoing of fear in my own mind. And one of the other course quotes that came to mind that is such a kicker is that, you know, when we're seeing our brother, our sister, our spiritual siblings acting in a certain way, and we're like, they shouldn't, you know, whatever it may be, they shouldn't be doing that. The Course says so clearly, if you're seeing the errors of your brother's ego, you must be seeing through yours. And that's always like that quote that's like, ouch, you know, it doesn't, we get no slack with the Course. It's always about bringing it back to us. So that I thought of that when you were sharing. I love hearing your rooster. I just have to tell you.
They just happen to love, there's a spot right outside my, this room here. It's like a patio, and they love this covered area, and they chose to be with us today. So that's why you hear them so clearly. They're right on my right side of the ear.
That's awesome. We only have hens, so we don't have any rooster, but they make all sorts of fun clucking noises, and it's really cute.
I will happily send you a couple of my roosters.
Got to keep the neighbors happy. So.
Exactly.
Oh, awesome.
That is such a beautiful point that you shared, Corinne, about seeing error in others. That seems to be something that we all kind of are confronted with, regardless of what it is. And so the Course says, if you see the error in your brother, I'm sorry, I just got distracted because I saw a question come in, or someone, it says, I think the rooster is channeling the Holy Spirit. And I will agree with you. I will completely agree with you, because what I'm about to say, or what I was about to share, because Corinne, you were talking about, seeing the errors through others, and you must be seeing the error through your ego. It's like, if I see something outside of me and I deem it wrong or an error, then it must be that I'm assuming myself to be something separate from the error that I perceive. So it's like, I have to be a separate entity to perceive something outside of me. So, but what the Course is bringing us to is to an experience of oneness. So it's an experiential I don't even know if the word understanding is the right word, but it's bringing us to an experiential understanding or knowing of our oneness. And so that must mean that we must come to the recognition that everything is part of us, including the part that we deem erroneous or not appropriate. And so I say it ties into the rooster as well, and I agree, because how can the Holy Spirit, which shares in the same attributes as God, which is omnipotence and is everywhere, everything, how can it not be the rooster? How can it not be anything and everything? Because there's nowhere where Holy Spirit isn't. So I just felt to share that, because I know for me that's still, if someone upsets me, or I think someone upsets me, then to your point, my responsibility is to correct the error in my mind, for which believes that there's somebody out there that's not me, or that is not the Holy Spirit.
Beautiful. I love that. And you again made me think of another Course quote that helps me so much. I do not know what anything is for. I don't know how to perceive it. I don't know how to react to it. I can't think of the whole quote, but just that idea of, I don't know what anything is for. I have no idea. And so how can I possibly be in a place where I think I can judge it and determine it as, good or bad or whatever? I don't know what anything is for. And that to me has also brought me so much peace, because it's just a place of complete freedom of deciding that I don't know anything. I don't know what anything. Rules for decision. That's the section that I'm thinking of in A Course in Miracles that can be really helpful to review.
Beautiful. So it's almost been an hour, and we got about 5 minutes left, and I just wanted to give us both an opportunity to share any final words. Also, if anybody had any thoughts or wanted to share a question, certainly you can go ahead and text right in. And while we're waiting for that, or before I hand it over to you, I just wanted to share with everybody that you and I, and it just dawned on me just now, because as we were sharing and talking, I'm really having a joyful time and experiencing joy with you. We're going to actually be talking or presenting at the 2016 A Course in Miracles conference in Vegas. So we will get to do this again on a live stage. So like everything else, it's gonna help us or certainly give us an opportunity to continue our mind training and share and extend at the conference. So I'm looking forward to that, to do that with you, Corinne. And this is also an invitation to anybody who's listening to come join us in Vegas. We'd love to have you. And if you decide to come, please mention Corinne or I as how you heard about the conference and where you're going, because the way they do it is you have to kind of tell who inspired you, so that we can come again and we want to share again. So that's how they keep the cadence of presenters lined up each year at the conference. So we certainly want to extend going forward. So that's the only thing I wanted to share. And with that, I'll hand it over to you, Corinne, before we say goodbye to everybody.
Yeah, thank you, Craig. I also thank you so much for mentioning Vegas. I've been saying, you know, there's that saying, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. I keep saying what happens in Vegas is for the healing of all. So I do hope that anybody watching might feel inspired to join us there. It's going to be a lot of fun, and I'm really looking forward to it. In terms of any concluding thoughts, I just feel a lot of gratitude. I feel so inspired by how many people are hearing the message, by how many people are hearing that call to awaken, to want enlightenment, to want to wake up. And I'm just so grateful for such mighty companions, because we're all healing together. We're all, every miracle that someone experiences, every gain that somebody makes, it's for everyone. It's not just for that one person. The Course talks about how we have no idea how, as we heal, how we're affecting others. One of the quotes is that a bird somewhere with broken wings begins to sing. We have no clue how much our own allowing of that undoing of fear in our minds touches others. And so I'm so grateful for everybody who's tuning in and watching this, because you're helping me, we're helping each other, and I just feel an enormous amount of gratitude for all of our mighty companions. So yeah.
Awesome. Yay, I couldn't have said it better. I love you so much, Corinne. I love you guys who've spent the last hour with us joining of the minds. So thank you for joining us. I love you all, and I look forward to seeing you on the next adventure.
Awesome.
Talk to you soon.
Love you all. Bye.
Bye.